And we're recording. This is the SIG Network meeting for August 19th, 2021. Bridget, I think you're ready to go on issue triage. You should be able to share.
Yes, indeed. Though I'm looking at Tim hovering over the planet and thinking, I bet Tim has stuff to say here too. But I can share.
Well, I went through it this afternoon, and I saw that other people were in there too. There were no issues to discuss after pre-triage, except that there were two that had been marked triage but weren't actually.
Yeah.
So I have
absolutely. All right, I'm sharing what I think is the right thing. We will find out. Way too many issue tabs open. This looks right. Okay.
So first all of these are waiting for more information or something. They've all been pre-triaged.
Fantastic. And then you said there were a couple more that you had anything you needed to do?
I have two if you want to display the two, or if you want me to display, it doesn't matter. Number 104394.
I'll just jump right to it since I have it up. Okay.
So something about not logging events properly. I didn't pull all the context on it because I just found it a few minutes ago, but does anybody have any context on this one?
Yes, if the event is in the default namespace, it doesn't, there's a bug in the Go client code around the ref, the way they create ref. There's a PR reference below that fixes this, but it's not really our code. It's not in SIG network code, it's in Go client.
Is it going to merge?
Or is it in trouble? It's waiting for somebody to approve it.
But there is some controversy with this PR. There are 2 or 3 PRs trying to fix this, and I don't know why they are going back and forth, Poetic, and I didn't.
No, the PR I've seen is like 2 lines change.
This is a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, but
March.
There is the other one that says Cal is right, but there are 2 or 3.
Set see the set default namespace, like the open PR that's referenced. That's the one I looked at, not this one. It's really just F namespace equal empty string, then namespace name equal default.
This one.
Yeah, that's the one I looked at, and it's really like there's nothing to it really.
So why is the other PR so controversial?
The other PR has 3 files changed, right? And I don't think we need to change just this function. But if you looked at the PR, you will see that they're really not doing anything.
Okay.
If this is empty, set it, then that's it.
Okay. Why don't Bridget? Or I'm just to self-assign it since I've got it open here too. I'll assign this and I will go stir the pot on those bugs. See if anybody gets mad at me for just approving it.
What's the worst that could happen?
Just putting a related.
Hey, what's the worst that could happen?
I put a related
Tim to the one we were just looking at. Stay on overnight fixing it.
No, you don't think big enough. That is not the worst that could happen. All right.
When wildfires are in the mix, you know, anything could happen.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's pretty orange down here. The next one that I had, 104329.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Internal error when patching a service.
So I haven't tried to reproduce this yet.
So I wanted to take it on, but I was not sure how will this work with the PR you're working on right now.
I don't know the answer to that either, but it would be nice to know which internal error it was hitting. Is it like in the IP allocator or something else?
So let's do this. I'll spend the day today try to repro this, and I will Slack you with what I find, and then we can see where we can put a solution for it, either in
Awesome.
your PR or standard PR.
Yeah, it seems like they've attached a good repro to it, so
yeah,
hopefully not too hard.
All right.
So those are the only two that I had flagged.
All right, that looked okay to you, Cal? You wanted to sign for now?
yeah, sure.
Okay.
I went and I like knocked few issues like trash accepted, and some things were on our SIG, and I moved them to other SIGs. Right, and I
saw
looked at
that
few
thing
PRs.
too.
Yeah.
A reminder for everybody, there are a lot of bugs open. There's 150-ish, 147 open issues that are tagged SIG Network. Many of them are assigned to people here, and I don't feel good about going through 150 bugs pinging the assignees. So please take a half hour to load up the list of issues, especially the issues that are assigned to you, but maybe just all of them, and run through and see if there's anything that you signed up to do that you're not doing.
Yeah.
Would appreciate it.
I have a general question. When somebody comes in with a bug that exists in an unsupported version, like somebody was reporting a bug in kubeproxy v1.15,
I think it's best effort. If it seems like something that might be a real bug and we can reproduce it easily, then we should try to reproduce it. If it's, I think the one that you're looking at, it was like a spurious, error occasionally, sometimes from kubeproxy, and we're like, I don't know what to do with that. So much has changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we ask for more information. I think you did the right thing. Ask for more information, but let them know, manage expectations. Like there's only so much we can do if it turns out to be a bug in 15.
Okay.
I mean, if it can't be reproduced in a supported version, there's literally nothing we can do, right? We're not going to fix bugs in old versions. So like if they can't do a repro in a supported version, the conversation's probably over, right?
Sometimes repro is not that easy as it sounds like, but he's saying intermittent, or they are saying it's an intermittent issue. I was like, okay, I can't do much there. Anyway, but I got what you're trying to say. Thank you.
Great. Bridget, you were next on the agenda.
Okay, awesome. So at the last SIG Network meeting, we talked about moving the dual stack work forward. So a couple of concrete things I need from this crowd here. I put in links, clarifications, et cetera, and a little more nuance than we had in the acceptance criteria in the CUP for moving to stable. And I would love to get yes, no change, et cetera, on that. And then also I took a look right before this meeting at the enhancements list, the official list for 1.23, and we would need to get our enhancements issue listed on there, which I believe the current process is your SIG chairs do it. So those are the two things I'm asking for.
Okay. I haven't yet started to think about which caps go on the spreadsheet. I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but we should for sure do that. Cal and I were just talking about this yesterday. This brewing PR for service flattening. I really think we should get that in before we flip the gate off. So I've been working as hard as I can to get that PR ready. I'm fairly confident that we're fine, but the KEP window is first. So we need to get the KEP updated.
Yep. I believe I'm supposed to have like enhancements free stuff done by September 9th too. So I'm keeping an eye on that calendar.
Okay.
We did not prescribe the behavior of policy field in the KEP. So I'm not sure if you want to prescribe it or not. That's something.
If you're comfortable with the change as I proposed it, then we could. I think it definitely makes things more obvious.
Okay. So I'll wait for you a bit until the PR you're working on is like in a state where we can look at it, and then side by side I'll update the KEP.
Okay. Well, it passes tests now, so the question is such a change palatable? It is a behavioral change from beta.
Right.
We'll have to write really good release notes.
Great. The last item on the agenda was from Rahul. I guess I saw you here.
Yeah, hi. So the this is in regards to the cap for supporting multiple cluster siders. So we've had a decent amount of good discussion, especially thanks to Antonio for chiming in on the cap. There's a couple of open items that I wanted to discuss, and then hopefully we can get this merged in. I think there's only a couple of things to discuss. The first is something that may or may not be interest. So the first one is has to do with changing the actual spec that we're proposing. So this is something that Maciej, I think he's on the call, he had suggested. Basically, the idea is that we want to specify both families of IPs in a single object and basically say, here's your IPv4 CIDR block, here's your IPv6 block, and then select a bunch of nodes that applies to. And basically, the hope is that by being very specific about selecting a set of nodes and assigning them either things from one IP family or two IP families, we'll be able to support upgrades better. Basically, if someone has an existing cluster that's single stack and they want to go to dual stack, they can start moving nodes one by one or however they choose. This obviously has some implications on there will be a period of time where the customers are running sort of some pods with single stack, some pods with dual stack, and that sort of thing. But I'm not sure if the actual upgrade behavior is well defined or if there's some sort of guidance we want to provide on that. That's sort of the question here is how much do we want to lean into this? Like it provides good behavior for upgradability at the, but it ends up creating some sort of split scenarios. I don't know if Maciej, if you want to add any more or.
Sure. So the other concern is as well some corner cases of race conditions of assigning specific IP family to the node. And since node is not, at least that field is not immutable, once assigned, you stack with that, right? So if we split the families across two objects, then you must make sure both of the families are already there before you assign them, right? So there is that as well concern, which then later have to be either handled by Kubernetes when you create a cluster or some other mechanism when you kind of set it all up. There was another thing. So we had as well a small discussion about how would you basically decide whether it's a single stack or dual stack, because that's currently indirectly assumed, oh, you provided two IP families that matches it, then go assign two. But that might not be always the case, right? Maybe with this true dual probability of providing those two, we can have some ways of defining, okay, I want to have always dual stack or single stack or one of the both, right? So it's more deterministic on what's desired by the user when they create a cluster.
So the race argument holds a lot of water for me. I don't think in general we prescribe anything about cluster upgrades or node IPAM. So presumably how a node decides to use single stack or dual stack is entirely outside of Kubernetes' ownership right now. And so there's no intent. It's not like a service where you can specify, I want these IP families, right? The node is the reflection of reality, not the request for reality, right? I'm not sure where I was going with that. But anyway, the point is, I guess that's outside of what Kubernetes can control. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that somebody somewhere is going to want to update a live cluster from dual stack to, or from single stack to dual stack. I've just spent the last 3 days writing tests for services to do that. So I think we do have to handle the in-between state. And that, like I said, the race thing holds water for me.
Yeah, but I think that they have everything well covered, because once you have the CIDRs assigned, you need to create a new node. We don't have the services problem here because this is immutable after creation.
What happens if I have a node that can't create because it doesn't have any more CIDR space, or I just happen to have a race where I'm creating a node in the middle of creating the 2 CIDRs, and it picks up one of them, but I wanted it to have both of them.
Yeah, that's
Like,
why.
I mean,
yeah, that's what they are just suggesting. So the problem is that right now we have one spec for each family, but what they are suggesting is just have one spec for both families. So you never. So I think that that's covering that scenario, but I don't know if there are more scenarios, because we cannot go from single to dual. I think that's, or at least is what I understood.
You can't change a given node from single to dual, but you can create new nodes. So if there's a race, then you need to have both in one atomic API transaction, which is creating the one CIDR config. So I don't like. Sorry, go ahead, Antonio.
Yeah, but the thing, the race is now. But if you can assign 2 CIDRs, the controller is going to read one spec with 2 CIDRs.
Yes, that's right. That would fix the problem.
Right, and I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, my feeling was I don't like having them both in one config. I like the idea that they're composable, but the race problem seems real to me.
Yeah,
so I guess I'm agreeing with you. I'm willing to, I think, agree with that change.
In the other side is we are going in alpha. So how hard is to say, well, this didn't work out.
Sure. I mean, we try to get it right on the first time, but
Yeah, we always try. That's for sure.
Track record's not so great, but
I mean, I think that the cap is missing.
I'm not sure I understand. I honestly am not sure I understand the problem.
The problem?
Sorry, sorry, that's a dumb question, I know, but
imagine that I have just sort of asynchronously, I'm creating a node like an autoscaler or something. And as a user, I'm also adding a CIDR config so that node IPAM will come up with dual stack. If I lose the race, I'm going to end up with a node that has 1 stack when I wanted it to have 2.
That's playing with fire, by the way. Especially in multi-master environment. You're basically, the outcome is undeterministic. The reason dual stack might work, especially in managed environment, is people, generally speaking, tend to upgrade by creating new nodes and deleting old nodes, and they upgrade API server first, and that works. But an existing node because you don't know the new node, even if you set it up like on one API server, your new node might connect on all the API server, which doesn't have the 2 CIDRs.
Let me make a different race, see if this is real or not. I've run out of CIDR space in my cluster.
Yes.
I create a new node, but I can't allocate it a CIDR because there's nothing to allocate from. They're all full. Then as an administrator gets an alert, they go and they say, oh crap, let me go create the thing. Kubectl will create CIDR config, family v4, create that, boom, the node schedules, or the node gets fulfilled. And now I can't, even though my next action was to write a v6, that node now gets resolved and I can't change it. Is that the right race?
That's also right race, yes.
So, and I think that's real. I think that would be what happens, because you can't add a second CIDR to a node unless you want to go off and implement that, Cal.
If there is value in it, what is
There is.
I mean, if I am operating on this cluster and I'm trying to unwork it because we record it, let me use a good language. Unblock it. What I will do is I will read the node object and bounce kubelet on the node. So that will fix it, right?
No, bouncing kubelet wouldn't be enough, right? You'd have to have something that reran the node IPAM allocator.
No. Deleting the node object will, once the bouncing the kubelet,
Oh,
it
yes,
will create
yes,
a new,
yes. Sorry, I missed
and then
the
it will
delete
get
the
us.
node part.
And the registration will work because the node comes with a new existing name. So every pod running will just keep running. But that's operational wizardry, not.
That's a dirty trick.
That's dirty because I know the details, right? I don't know.
I guess
So
my feeling is I'm not against the idea of putting the two into one config. It doesn't seem awful to me.
Or we make node IPAM immutable. The node cider, not .spec.cider, mutable, not immutable. Like.
Oh. Then we have to explain what people are allowed to expect will happen if they change it. Do you really expect all the pods on the node to restart with new IPs?
No, I don't.
That's why it's immutable in the first place. You can make it additive, but then it's the same thing. You have to have a human who recognizes this error condition and comes along and changes it because there's no statement of intent that this is supposed to be a dual stack node. Unless we add that, which I don't want to do.
No, I don't have a solution on top of my head. Other than what's proposed looks fine, but yeah. I need to think about this because every time we touch these things, we are inevitably unlock corner cases that we didn't know until we're so far into the progress of implementation. It's just a case of something depend on something, depend on something, depend on something, and so on. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Rahul, I think what you're hearing is mostly nobody has an obviously better answer and nobody hates this enough to try to find a better answer.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So yeah, I mean, barring anything else, I think we'll try to go down that path.
You gonna make that a CAP update then?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and update the CAP to reflect that. The other,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I think that you're going to talk about the CRD thing.
Yeah. The other thing that we wanted to talk about was making this a CRD versus a built-in part of the API. And so I think, Tim, you were especially vocal about making it a CRD so we could, change our minds in the future or, experiment first and then pull it in tree later on. One of the main reasons we're thinking that keeping it as an inbuilt makes sense has to do with reading the old values, like basically dealing with upgrades from the existing node IPAM allocator to the new one. So our upgrade story right now was that we would respect the old flags that get assigned on the kube controller manager, and we would read those values and actuate based on that. And also customers could then, or users could then go in and make more resources that define additional discontiguous ranges as they want. But if we're running as a CRD with a separate controller, we don't have access to any of those flags, so we can't we can't do a seamless upgrade. And we were also piggybacking on the leader election implemented in Kube Controller Manager. And if we have to build our own controller, we have to handle that problem ourselves again in a high availability situation. So based on those, we were leaning towards trying to make this a built-in part of the API.
I think that this is not possible to make it with CRDs and external controller because it's also meant to replace current mess that we already have with the iPads. And as he says, how do you boot the cluster from? You had a thread with the API machinery folks about the CRDs. So
yeah, it's not a resolved problem yet. But notice that there's a distinction between using a CRD to define the schema and necessarily using an external controller. You can define a CRD and still have a built-in controller. right? It's just not, I guess it's not the norm, but it wouldn't be the first time that's happened. I'm fine with making this a built-in. If we think that that's really what's necessary, then I feel like we've done the homework to figure out why CRD is not reasonable.
This also relates to changing CIDRs and adding more CIDRs and all of that discussion that we had. So we need to think with this in mind as well. So
just know that adding it as a built-in is a lot of boilerplate.
Yeah.
Don't copy services. Start from somebody else's example.
Okay. I guess does anyone else have any input they'd like to share? Otherwise,
Are you targeting this release?
that would be, I guess, ideal. I'm not sure about, I guess, the feasibility of that.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think that sounds like we can explore keeping this as an or making this a built-in API instead of a CRD. All right, that's all I had. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. That was the end of the formal agenda, but it sounds like Cal in the chat, you said you wanted to talk about a couple caps.
no, I just so I spent a good chunk of my last week looking at caps, and there is a bunch of them that are high value but are paused, not progressing, right? Or like you find them like the typical thing, you find like too many issues open that people are trying to close and all of that. Two of them I took a personal note of because I want these features, like the all port ones and the traffic shaping ones, right? How can we help? Can we just go ahead and, I don't know, like PR against the PR, push them forward? I just want to make sure that I'm not stepping on anybody's toes here while I'm trying to push things forward.
I think the all ports was pretty well stuck, if I remember the last state of it, trying to figure out an API that didn't break existing users. Pavitra?
Right. Yeah. I think there are two major issues right now from what I can see. One is, we kind of agreed upon the last time that we could introduce this all ports bool or bool pointer field and soak that in the Alpha API to make sure all the node versions, like we have a supported node version upgraded before we ever graduated to beta. So, clients like keyproxy or DNS have had 2 release cycles to upgrade to, to pick up that new field. So that, I think we had a path forward. The things we are stuck on is, one, how would the implementation work on IPVS? Because if you used an IP level load balancing with IPVS without doing the FW mark, you would get the client IP session affinity behavior. Like that would be the forced behavior. Like anything that matches the phi tuple goes to the same pod all the time, which could be considered a regression, which might be okay. I think that's one issue that's on the thread, and I saw Antonio and Lars talk about use IP tables for that, or I don't know if we can just assume that behavior is okay and caveat and go to alpha with it. That's one open issue. The other open issue is there was a comment from John Howard, I think, about Istio or network policy not able to implement this, or will have to come up with a path for network policy to work on top of this, or Istio to implement this field. So maybe that again could be a caveat and move to alpha, or is there a better answer there? These are, I think, the two major questions it's stuck on at this point.
In terms of how we want to iterate KEPs, is it make sense to merge it and have PRs against this, or we just keep it floating? It's kind of hard to, I guess, for people to contribute in the current setup.
I don't think anybody is like, you can PR, but the PR won't merge. It might be a good idea to see how things will change if you implemented it. Like, let's say, okay, the cap is at 70%. Yes, we know the 30% remaining are critical and important to clarify, but you can still try to PR and see how things will change and see all the hidden ghosts that we might show up.
Yeah, the KEP intention was merge and iterate, right? So maybe the right thing to do is just to press for, we know that this is unresolved. We've marked the unresolved sections. In fact, we have specific syntax to say this part of the KEP is not resolved, and we should merge the parts we do agree on. That doesn't mean that it's ready to implement. It just means that we're checkpointing the partial agreements. So sure. And in fact, that should be true for all KEPs. We've done sort of a terrible job of that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I could move the unresolved questions to a separate section and clean up and try to merge what I have right now. And yeah, that might unlock other folks to do PRs on top of it.
For IPBS, if you have buy-in from Lars and Andrew, that are the main maintainers, I mean.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we could. I could put the IP tables solution for IPBS and see if we can get sign off. Oh, I see Lars is on the call here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I want to be like something that just crossed my mind. I did not mean to put anybody on the spot. I am just trying to push things forward, and I had 3 hours last week, so I'm sorry if I put you on the spot. I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, no, that's fine. I appreciate the question. Yeah. That helps move it forward. Yeah. I've been stuck on it for a while, so thank you.
Cal, how do you have a few free hours when you owe me a bunch of tests?
Okay, I lied. Come on.
He felt like procrastinating.
I was just trying to do something different. Sometimes you just need to like look at the future. Yeah. Yes, I am. I got you. All right. Don't worry. Just it's been an interesting week last week.
What was the second one? All ports and traffic shaping.
Traffic shaping. Traffic shaping is different from the all ports because traffic shaping is still not even at okay, this looks like a way out, at least as far as I can tell from the KEP. Like we know what we want, we just don't know how to get there. I know Antonio has his own reservation on like this might not be even possible to implement, but it's a common requirements. Like I've been dealing with a lot of customers deploying fairly large workloads, and they come from one-to-one mapping between workload and machines. And as they pack into things, they know that okay, I am okay dealing with CPU and memory this way. It just disks and network are also something we worry about. So that's something I've been thinking about as well.
But there was something working in Docker Shim. No, I mean, there was some bandwidth code in Docker Shim with traffic.
The alpha code.
No, I know that some person
the annotations
to do something with annotation, but the traffic control is I think that is the worst thing to configure. I remember a PR, somebody fighting to someone trying to create, the right bandwidth, burst, and all these parameters that they require. You can use the annotation. It's a matter to implement in the CNI.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll tell you what. I'll read again. All right, and can send out like an email over the group and see if we can find a solution. All right. So let me reread the cap again and come up with a couple of ideas, and we'll see. We'll take it from there. How about that?
I've had a lot of discussions. I apologize to Lars and everybody. I haven't reread this cap since it re-entered the sphere. But I've had a lot of discussions with folks, and it's really fuzzy to me whether what people are asking for is scheduling of bandwidth resources, like CPU bytes, network bytes, memory bytes, CPU network bytes. Or if what they want is like a prioritized access to bandwidth, or if what they want is a guaranteed minimum with the option to burst. So in many ways, I just don't know what the requirements are here.
I think the implementation is to limit bandwidth for a particular pod.
The bandwidth limit is no different from traffic priority, by the way.
If you're
So
saying something, Tim, we can't hear you.
Most people would want to say, okay, I have 10 pods on the node. All right, that particular pod cannot override that other particular pod. But as long as that other particular pod is not using the bandwidth, then that pod can take it. In other ways, it's traffic classification, TC, basically.
The question is that really the requirement? Because I've certainly had people say, no, I want this pod to have a hard limit. I don't care if there's idle capacity. This pod bought an ISDN line and they're getting 128K, damn it. And everybody else can share the rest of the bandwidth, but that's it. And I've heard other people describe it as you describe it, right? Like if P0 needs it, then give it to him, but otherwise give it to P1 with some, fair balancing at some level, some proportion, more like CPU shares, right?
I'm guessing out of the wild, we'll see all shapes and colors of requirements, right? So there's that as well. I don't know. Like I'll read and come back. I don't have an answer.
I mean, I don't even think we've figured out what CPU limits really mean yet. So like, I don't know how we're going to figure out what, and we've had that around for years, right?
CPU limits work better than they used to, and they mostly do what people expect, mostly unless you look too close.
Yeah, but there is one difference. CPU, you have multiple CPUs. Network, you only have one. I mean, it's shared. You don't have the network is one thing only. So
but you could still have the same problem of having multiple threads that are sending traffic that exhaust your quota before the, wildly before the wall clock. That was the big problem with CPU shares, right? Or CPU limits.
Yeah, but the thing is, how do you model the network? I mean, you only have one NIC, so you are what you are doing is you are multiplexing in time and giving slots, and you are creating a lot of latency and a lot of the things. I mean, I never seen this working.
And also, network is not exactly a resource that can be enumerated, meaning you cannot create an allocatable of 1 GB. Like you cannot. There is no way to detect the max bandwidth of a node. All right. I know. Cloud like to say, "Oh, you're gonna get 10 G or 100 G or whatever," but the reality is that's not something that.
I understand the large cap, and I think that is a use case. Is I want this pod to have 10 megas or 10 G or whatever, and that's I don't see any problem. It's an annotation, and the annotation is consumed by the CNI. So I don't think that we need to do anything there. But the other thing with priorities is much more complex because, as I say, the thing is everybody wants to get top priority, and then configuring traffic control and all the queues and all the things. I mean, that's impossible. That doesn't scale.
I'll tell you what, between all ports and this one, all ports is definitely has much more people waiting for it. Right. There are people like the networking, the bandwidth limits and all of that. People can wait, and there are some solution out there like this, the annotation that you talked about, or people even just monkey batch it into
No, but
the,
for bandwidth,
PC.
we don't need to do anything.
I don't know. Like,
no,
then
because
exactly
you don't have control on the NICs. It's the CNI. It's the CNI who has to read the annotation and create the read limit.
All right.
Unless I'm missing something, Lars, you're here, but I don't know what.
I haven't actually tested this. I was requested to bring the cap back into life because the function is already implemented by some CNIs. And we have kind of a restriction against using alpha features. And this has been in alpha since 2018, I believe. But the function is there from what I can understand.
So I think that from SIG Network is just giving the stamp that these annotations are beta or whatever.
Yeah, and bring it to general availability that some CNIs are free to interpret these official sanctionized annotations.
I don't know. Casey or Dan, is this implemented in Calicon or in Antrea or in OpenShift? I think that some of them are already implementing some sort of rate limit.
I think that Calico does it, but via the like reference tuning plugin. It's been a while since I looked at that though. It was probably in like 2018 that it's the last time I paid attention to that.
Well, maybe we can put that as graduation criteria, Tim. If it's just people is holding because we don't approve an annotation.
I'm really torn on what to do with this one because the annotation's awful, but making it a real API means like we're endorsing that everybody should support it.
Why?
Because we have very few APIs that we say, here's a field, but it's totally optional. You don't have to implement it.
Right.
Like what other examples other than like whole APIs like network policy and Ingress? For the most part, if a field is in your pod spec, it works.
No, but we are talking about annotations.
Yeah, but annotations as an API are just awful.
Yeah, annotations. I want to double check. I will check I will do my homework, check all the annotations that are official in Kubernetes, and come back saying.
Just because it's awful doesn't mean we haven't done it in the past.
So I don't know. I mean, if someone has a use case and is waiting for and this is implemented in 2 and 3, I mean, I think that I don't know. I thought that was simple.
Yeah. All right. I mean, maybe I'll come back around to this. I'm gonna, with the KEP freeze coming up, I've got to turn my attention and go back through the 25 or so KEPs that I have in my queue, including this one. So I'll get back to it, and maybe it's not so bad.
I believe that the way the users would test this is to have 2 pods and run iPerf on them and expect it to be 10 gig or 10 meg if they say so. And if it is, everybody's happy.
Yeah, but it's CNI specific implementation. Kubernetes only is going to, if it's going to do something, is going to say this annotation can be used by CNIs to implement this.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So imagine it works on one provider and you have another cluster on a different provider or with a different CNI, and it doesn't work on that. Like, it seems like it will be miserable for users to be sure that they've got what they want working.
Okay, I got
but
your
maybe
point
that's
now.
maybe that's the best we can do, right? Maybe it's this is optional, and if your CNI implements it, then cool, and if not, too bad. Pick a better CNI.
Now I understand your concerns. Okay.
That's the end.
Topics. Yeah, that was it. Unless there were other topics people want to discuss. Some under chat messages.
I have one topic to throw out there on the topic of caps. What is our stance on new caps going into 123? Like, Tim, I know there was that email thread where we were talking about whether we should be holding off on caps for longer until our backlog is more smaller. But yeah, for 123, like, what are we thinking?
Sorry, I was just looking at the dashboard. I didn't prep for this today, so I don't have time. We need to do a run through of all of the caps on the project board and see what's moving this cycle and decide if we feel we have breathing room in there. There's a ton in the pre-alpha state. There's not many in alpha right now, which is actually great. There's some that have been stuck there forever. We need to figure out what we want to do with those. There's a bunch in the beta, and hopefully, what I really want to figure out is how many of those are going to go to GA from beta. Right now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in beta and 4 in alpha. The only one that I know for sure plans to go GA is dual stack. Jay, or you think the port range, network policy port range, or Ricardo, do you think that's going to go GA?
If OpenShift folks or Cilium folks accept that as a in the CNI, yeah, there is that restriction of network policy with status, but I don't know. We need to discuss with the scalability folks, the production readiness folks, because they are expecting us to put the features as a status in network policy, and I don't think it's as easy as they think. Otherwise, that's just a matter of another CNI adding the port range, and we can go to GA.
Okay. And Andrew, 4 of them in beta are yours. Are you trying to push more in before you get some out?
So definitely planning to get all those to GA, but of course, like, best effort, right? I don't know what issues we'll run into or whatnot. I also don't know, like, if we want to talk about how many features we should allow to go GA in a single release. Like, these are all beta, so they're on by default anyways. So I think it's just a matter of like, you know, doing more testing, adding more test cases and whatnot.
I don't have a problem having a bunch of stuff go from beta to GA, since, like you said, it's already on, unless there's fundamentally changing how they work. Dual stack. Most of these seem like they could and probably should go GA together, or some of them anyway, like the terminating endpoints and traffic policy. So I don't have a problem with that. I wouldn't want to move like 10 things from alpha to beta at the same time.
Yeah.
So I guess if we honestly think that we're going to be able to clear out 4 or 5 of these betas into GA, then I do feel like we've got some breathing room. Now we've got, it looks like 10 or so in pre-alpha. I would prioritize getting those out of pre-alpha and into alpha before taking new pre-alphas, if that's fair. Like the multi-sider that we talked about earlier, right? I guess I'm saying I'm not terribly against it as long as we can make some breathing room, but I'm going to prioritize the ones that are already pre-alpha.
I mean, is there also a case of putting KEPs in pre-alpha back into like a needs review kind of label? Because like I know a lot of them are old or like don't have owners anymore. Are we sure that all the pre-alpha ones are KEPs that we actually want still? Because they've been kind of stale for a bit.
And I have zero confidence that they are all what we want anymore. We should definitely, if we think that they're not, let's just, like if they're dead, if they're stalled, close them. Just take them off the board and untag them. And if people really want to bring them back, they can bring them back.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
The short answer maybe by proxy is I don't want to have to review 25 KEPs every cycle.
Yep, that's fair.
All right, folks, I think that is the end. Next meeting is September 2nd, it looks like, 2 weeks from now.
Let's plan for September 2 that we'll run through that project board and see what is or isn't moving or hasn't moved. I challenge everybody here to make things move before then. And if we're good, then we can let a few more trickle into the pipe.
Yep. Added that to the agenda.
Don't forget, enhancements freeze is coming like winter. And it is coming September 9th, which will be the week after the meeting that Tim is talking about.
Yes, that's a great point. I encourage you all to try to get things to move before then. Ping me or Dan or Casey on Slack or email and let us know which KEPs we need to add to the spreadsheet for sure, and which ones are maybes.
See y'all later. I'm going to stop the recording.
Bye.
Have an afternoon, everybody.